let me quickly say this. I am not totally obtuse to information technology. You see, I do understand something about Skyping, tweeting, and blogging. And even if I didn't, simply by being aware of what is in the New York Times and CNN, all of us knows that what all of us experienced in Cairo, in Alexandria, in Egypt, may not have happened as it did without such information technology.
Amen.
And thanks be to God for it. But I do know that in the context of this post-modernity, technology has shifted the way we live our lives and the way we communicate with each other. When I went to school, when I was taught in a segregated classroom in Madison County, I was taught, sitting in that desk, that the word friend was a noun. You too? Now, a friend is not just a noun. Friend is a verb. I can friend you, and you can friend me. And if I don't like what you put on your blog or my blog, I can unfriend you. Unfriend me. In this age of post-modernity, people collect friends the same way my grandmother collected fabric scraps for the making of a quilt. The more scraps Big Mama collected, the more scraps Big Mama could afford to throw away. And people have come, our society, our world, we've come to a place where friendship is something that exists just by a few, you can't even say strokes of a keyboard anymore, but a few strokes of a phone. You are my friend. You are not my friend. But thanks be to God, though we live in an age that is post-modern, the church has still seen fit, as of today, the church has still seen fit to not throw away the words of Jesus. Thanks be to God, there are still a few saints around who seek to read, mark, learn, and inwardly digest the words of Jesus so that we might understand them as the church for the living of these days. Jesus said, "My commandment is this, love each other as I have loved you. Greater love has no one than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends. You are my friends if you do what I command." So what does it mean to be a friend of Jesus? My brothers and sisters, let me suggest to you that if we want to be friends of Jesus, we must first come to the realization and recognize in this relationship just who's in control. When things are at their best in our human relationships, the psychotherapists tell us to seek equity. When things are at their best in our human relationships, the priest tell us to seek self-differentiation. When things are at their best in our human relationships and friendships, the therapists tell us to seek compromise. The church tells us understand the words of Jesus the way I understand the words of Jesus. And if we want to be friends of Jesus, I believe, as sure as I'm standing here, to be a friend of Jesus, there is no room for compromise. Jesus says, "You are my friends if you do what I command. Love each other as I have loved you." If we want to be friends of Jesus, we would do well to embody the words of Jesus. But I say to you, love your enemies. Pray for those who persecute you. If we want to be friends of Jesus, we would learn to pray the prayer as Jesus prayed on his knees in the Garden of Gethsemane. "Lord, not what I will, but what you will, and thy will be done." We want to be friends of Jesus. We would do well to remember just who's in control. But if ever there was a man in history who needed to know something about the friendship of Jesus, I believe it was Absalom Jones. Born in slavery in Delaware, he taught himself to read the New Testament. And in reading the pages of the New Testament, in my sanctified imagination, I imagined that Absalom Jones decided and purposed in his heart that there he would be a friend of Jesus. Absalom Jones being sold from one slave master in Delaware to another slave master in Philadelphia, and by the Christ-centered spirit in the lives of a few white people called Quakers, I believe again in my sanctified imagination that Absalom Jones, in that community of Quakers, learned something about what it meant to be a friend of Jesus. Through his earthly relationships with Richard Allen and Bishop White of Pennsylvania, Absalom Jones became a friend of Jesus. In his calling together other African-American people in Philadelphia and deciding to start a community of faith, the African-American Episcopal Church named St. Thomas, in that community, you know, I'm a bit frustrated with where, again, language has taken us to be in our self-spirituality today. You know, speaking to people, you say to them, you know, well, I've learned to phrase the question, what is your religious experience or your religious tradition? And then oftentimes people say, well, I was a Baptist, I was Presbyterian, I was raised Roman Catholic. And then sometimes people say, well, you know, I really don't have a religious tradition, I'm just spiritual. I'm just spiritual. I've yet to quite parse that one out. My brothers and sisters, there are a lot of things you can do in this world by yourself, but being a friend of Jesus ain't one of them. To be a friend of Jesus requires in and of itself, the nature of the friendship of Jesus calls for community. And Absalom Jones knew, even when things didn't quite work out with he and Richard Allen, he could have said, you know, I have a little money in my pocket and I could buy me a farm back there in Delaware somewhere. I could go up to the hills of Pennsylvania somewhere and I could take my wife and family and just stay here by myself. After all, I'm not sure if I can trust anybody with the way my life has run its course. I'm going to do this all by